Hello, boys and girls. I'm really excited to share a new tool that we'll be using this year for our reading. And this tool is a digital reading journal. And every good reader is always thinking about their reading. They're always having new thoughts and they're always going through a process of evaluating the book, understanding the book, interpreting what's happening in the story. And there are a lot of different thoughts that a good reader always has while they're reading. And one of the challenges of being an active good reader is also pausing to actually reflect on our reading and stop and think about our own thinking. And this tool, our reading journal, is going to be something that allows us to pause and give a chance to really put together some thoughts into words and on paper about what we are thinking about whatever book we're reading each week. And you may have caught that I said on paper. Well, not this year. This year, we're doing something a little different. We're going to be using this digital reading journal rather than a paper copy that you might have to bring to and from school or perhaps leave at school or leave at home. We're going to be using this digital reading journal, which we'll both have access to anytime, all the time. And it's going to be very, very useful because we're also going to have some nice little things in the beginning of it to help us keep track of what we want to make sure to include in our reading journal responses. So the first page is our cover, and you can put your name right here in the front if you'd like. The next page gives us a little bit of some information about what our reading journal is going to include. And it says each week you are responsible for reading a just right book and responding to that reading. Each week's response should follow the same format. And we'll show you that format in a moment. But the format should include, well, a neat response, and that should be easy because we are using our digital reading journals. And then we should also include the date, the title, the summary, and our thinking. Okay, and I'll show you a sample of that in a moment. And then this next page gives us some more information about what to include in a response. And there's two big things, two main categories. One is the summary. What happened in the story? The details from the story. So your summary should be about a specific part of the book. And then it should include details about the setting, the characters, and then the plot, which are the events of the story. And we can use specific quotations, which are the exact words from the book that might actually help you explain what the chapter or page or whatever it was that you read that inspired you to write a response was all about. Okay. And then we will use some thinking and some reading strategies. And that is something that we are going to be growing with throughout the year. And we're going to be learning about throughout the year. So you probably remember writing about or thinking about some reading strategies in the past, like connections and asking questions or making predictions. Those will still be something that we can do. But we can also start thinking about making inferences and creating what they call a synthesis of our text, or really starting to understand greater details of the story. So, our thinking is going to be about a part of the book that we've read, which was something that we already described. And then we want to use at least one of the reading strategies. And my old sheet that I have that I'm still going to have available for you in this class is called Using the Good Readers Think in Many Ways sheet. Well, I've renamed that actually, and I'm probably going to really just type that right in right now, but it says On this next page, it says sentence starters for my reading journal. And that's really what they're all about is sentence starters. So I'm going to change that actually right now for you. Sentence starters sheet. Okay, so that should make it sense. And then we can give our reasons for our thinking. And so this very next page, as I mentioned before, is that there is some sentence starters. If you have a prediction, you could think of different ways to say it by saying I predict, or in the next part, or I think this character will, or what this blank will happen later in the story, an event, um, whatever it might be. Questioning, you could think about why did a character act the way they did, or why did this event happen the way it did, or maybe where was this certain character when this certain thing happened. Those are questions that always pop into our heads as well as we're evaluating and thinking about a story. And then we have visualization, where we can picture something in our mind or imagine the scene if we were there, or if we were thinking about making a connection. We could think about a story reminding us of another story or a moment in our own lives. There are lots of different strategies that we can use. And I'm going to be talking to you all about them for the whole school year. And we're going to be working on them a lot. And we're going to be improving our ability to think about them and use them as we read. So here's a sample of what a passage might look like. And you may have noticed I skipped past a page. This one has to do with giving yourself a score. This is what they call a rubric. I'm not going to be getting into that today in this video. We're going to talk about this at another time, but I'm going to give you this just so you can look at it. And it's very detailed, as you can see. It's really, really small text. So I'm not going to get into the details of how we're grading our responses just yet. I want us just to work on trying to practice including the details that we want to include. So that's what this one's all about. And it's from a passage that we just read, Because of Winn-Dixie. And in chapter 4 of Because of Winn-Dixie, Opal approached her father, the preacher, as he was writing a sermon in their trailer, and asked him to tell her 10 things about her mother. The preacher seemed very reluctant to share these details with Opal, and that Opal could see him pulling his head into his old turtle head back into his stupid turtle shell. Do you remember that part? Right. So I wonder if the preacher will feel more comfortable talking about Opal's mother in the future. I also wonder if he still wishes Opal's mother didn't leave. Both Opal and the preacher seem to miss her an awful lot. So that's my personal thoughts on that. And I also gave some evidence from the text, or explained the moment in the story that made me think those things. All right. So this week, we are going to practice trying to write a response. And we have our first entry space here. And what we'll do is put our title and date up here. And then we will write our responses here. And we'll practice this all week long. And you may submit it to me, and I may send it back. And you may submit it to me again, and I may send it back. And that's part of the process of fine-tuning a response. And if you have any questions about if your response is, good enough or adequate, we can have that conversation too, through Google Classroom and in person too. All right, so there's both of those options. And then when we get to our next response, we will add another page and continue. All right, so this seems like a big, huge jump into some challenging work, but I promise you, we are going to take this step by step and make it very comfortable for us very soon. And it's going to be a normal routine that we have each week of working on our journal responses and thinking about our reading.